We are very concerned that at least 6,500 rapists, killers and paedophiles, that's the minimum number, could be released by the 2nd of September. And I'd like to start off by thanking Vicky, Carol, Sarah, Jade, Kaylee and Marie for being here this morning. This is not an easy thing that you're doing. And I want people to hear your story. I think it's very important that when these things happen, that we focus on the victims rather than the perpetrators. So today is their day. I will just give a few remarks, and then I'm going to hand over to the ladies on the table to tell their story. And I've also got my Shadow Victims Minister, Kieran, here with me, Kieran Mullan, who can talk about some of the detail of what is going on right now. But I would like to start off by saying that we know that the situation with prisons is challenging. When we were in government, we saw the challenge. We created 14,000 new prison places. That was nowhere near enough. We had a prison building target in our manifesto. COVID derailed that program. We'd sold some prisons to get the money to build new ones, but the program, as I said, was derailed. And we also had early release, but not like this. We never had this category of prisoners being released. We never had killers, rapists, paedophiles on early release. That is what I want to stop. And I know the Prime Minister has said that he has paused this program. It hasn't really been paused. He hasn't done anything at all to pause it. And he says that this is a quick pause. I think he said that on the Laura Koonsberg show. That is not good enough. If Andy Burnham wants to prove that he is serious about this, he needs to revoke the commencement order. That is the simple action that I'm asking for today. It's quite clear that the Prime Minister sees that this is a problem, but I don't think he knows what to do about it. We have done the work. We know that we need to revoke the commencement order immediately. He could do that today. That would show that he was really pausing it. And then he needs to bring in emergency legislation by the 2nd of September. This can be done. We heard them, the government talk about bringing in emergency legislation for a bank holiday if we won the World Cup. They can do this, and we will be here to help them facilitate that. It does need cooperation from other parties. But I'm very, very concerned that this will be yet another thing where there are warm words, but nothing actually happens. So I am asking that you stop the release of dangerous criminals before the 2nd of September, at least 6,500 of them, that the Labour government and Prime Minister Andy Burnham should revoke the commencement order now and then work with us for emergency legislation to stop this release before the 2nd of September. I'm now going to allow the ladies to tell their story. And I think I will start on my left-hand side with Kaylee and Marie, if you're ready.
Yeah, so our perpetrator was the same perpetrator. A few years ago, we went to Parliament and it was the Conservative MP that pushed through a legislation that these types of offenders and perpetrators would receive 2/3 of their sentence. So obviously when we received the news that now it's completely reverted, and it looks like these offenders will only serve 1/3, not even a half. It was just ridiculous.
Absolutely, yeah.
And as victims as well, we were also told this legislation could not be retrospective, so it wouldn't affect us. But now they're going back and they can do it for perpetrators retrospectively, but not for the victims. And it's just...
It's heart destroying.
Yeah.
Absolutely destroying us as victims, knowing that when you've got that letter come through the door, you know, that there's nothing in place, that we feel there's nothing in place for, you know, these perpetrators that, you know, have committed these serious offences. And, you know, they say, oh, they may be on tag or something like that. You know, is that right? You know, we have no idea as victims. We are scared. You know, it's quite no, you know, we're just, it's nerve-wracking for us.
I completely understand what this looks like from your perspective. We've had conversations with victims of all sorts of crimes. The grooming gang victims, for example, are also in this category. You have people commit horrific crimes, horrific sexual crimes, and they get let out early, walk past the houses of the victims. In some cases, it's basically thumbing their nose, not just at the justice system, but also at the women whose lives they have ruined. This is something that we want to stop. Do either of you want to talk about the letter that you received before I come on to Carol? Because you've got a statement that you'd like to read, don't you?
Yes. Well, I actually received a phone call first to say I would receive the letter. But in the phone call, she just couldn't give me if it was definitely going to happen. There were so many unanswered questions.
Uncertainty.
Yeah.
There is
Yes.
lots of uncertainty around the whole thing. They couldn't give us any times, dates, or anything like that. So
Exclusion zones.
exclusion
they couldn't tell
zones,
us.
giving us time to, maybe go back to court for any sort of, putting anything in place so we can be safe. So, my family can be safe. That's what I want to get out here today. It is us as victims. Are we safe? And I don't think we are. So
It's just a painful reminder that our fight for our voices, our fight for the justice system, the fight through the court.
yes,
It's horrific.
It's constant.
And it's
constant,
and
yeah.
it can be so easily diminished by this government. It's not right.
Thank you both.
thank you.
Carol.
Thank you. Incest is rife in the UK and not enough is being done about it. Only 2% of rape cases get to court. My dad was one of those 2%, and it took me 35 years from 1984 to 2019 to get justice. The judge said that the depravity of his crimes and the effect on me warranted the 20-year sentence. He raped me nearly every day for over 2 years and beat and groomed me from birth. So the sentence already does not accurately reflect the depravity. Instead of serving 50% of his sentence in prison, he will only serve 33. Every minute taken off his prison time is a minute added to my fear and anxiety and a trigger for my complex PTSD. I will be forever looking over my shoulder and wondering if he is there whenever I step out of my door. It is outrageous that the government are minimising the early release by saying it is only a small amount of time off the sentence. Would they minimise it if it was their child who had been raped by a grown man? For 35 years, he called me a liar and a fantasist. He lied all the way through the trial and denied his guilt. He will never be sorry and stop lying. No risk review or risk assessment is going to keep me safe from my dad. I fear his revenge because he has already threatened to effing have me in 2017 if I don't keep my mouth shut and stop exposing him for what he did to me. He has still got his illegal guns and naked Polaroid photos he took of me, his mobile phone and computer because he did not meet the criteria for arrest because it was historical child sex abuse. He was summoned to court. I was not his only victim. He raped children outside the home and in our neighbourhood as well. Even though he is an old man, he is a violent predator who is still a danger to the public in general. Innocent children should not have to live their lives. Innocent children should not have their lives stolen anymore. Reducing the sentence is stealing my justice. They will say my dad is an old man and not a risk. He was not an old man when he was raping me. He did the crime. He should serve the time. Do not let him out early.
Carol, that was an extremely powerful statement. Thank you so much. I can't imagine how difficult that was for you to read that. And I want to thank you for your bravery because it's really hard for people to come out in front of all the cameras and say what you just did. But I think this highlights the seriousness of what it is that we are talking about today. This isn't just shoplifters or people who are driving dangerously. This is people who who should be in prison for a very, very long time. And there are solutions, which we're going to talk about in a moment, on what we can do. But I think if we're going to get justice for these women, then many of these people should stay in prison. Sarah?
Yeah, so I received the letter about 4 weeks ago. And I'm not saying that my case is any different to anyone else's. It's just a simple fact that we're talking about child abuse and rapists. So when I received the letter, I felt sick to my stomach. And then about a week later, I had a phone call with the victim liaison officer. And she turned around to me and said that it affects 2 out of 7 of my perpetrators. One perpetrator, Maury, was sentenced to 19 years in September of 2025. And Hussein was sentenced to 20 years just February, just gone, so only 4 months ago. And the realisation that they could be out in either the next 5 to 6 years is just astonishing. I can't find the real words for it, because it's just so damn right disrespectful, not just to us as children, but also to us as fully grown adults. We didn't want what happened to us, but we did want justice. I fought 11 years for that justice. I went through 3 criminal trials, and now I feel like I'm having it snatched straight back out of my hands. I don't see the fairness. If we're saying 9,000 survivors and victims have received this letter up and down our country, and let's just say, for instance, each survivor has 2 perpetrators, that's 18,000 dangerous offenders back on our streets in the space of 6 years. Now, what are those 18,000 offenders going to do? We cannot monitor them with a tagging. We can't rehabilitate paedophiles. Paedophiles will never be rehabilitated. I just don't see how this is coming into power. And the pause, I welcome the pause, but the pause is just that. It's just a pause. It's not saying, OK, we're going to exempt. All it's doing is it's giving us more time and more breathing space, and it's not fair. We need to exempt all these dangerous offenders. I'd prefer a thief on the streets than someone who's going to rape another child.
I completely agree. I completely agree. And there hasn't really been a pause. A pause until September for people who are not coming out until September is not a pause. The government is saying that they want to review. They've already had a review. It's time to make a decision. And this is what I want to highlight today. I'm not, as leader of the opposition, going to let the government get away with telling people things that are actually misdirection. We do need to sort this out. Jade.
Yeah, so I was raped as a child, and I received an email to tell me that my perpetrator was going to be released under this new scheme. And to be honest, to begin with, I didn't actually think that it would apply to mine, because he hasn't even been in prison for 2 years. It took me 10 years to come forward, and that took everything within me. And now we're having to fight again, and I'm having to fight again. I'm fed up of being silenced and being made to feel like us survivors don't matter and we come second to these people, because we don't. They have ruined and changed our lives, and we deserve so much more than what this government has given us by doing this scheme, because it's not acceptable. It's just causing more trauma, and how long can we fight for? Like, how long do we have to fight for to be heard and to be understood, and for the people to do the right thing by us, because we don't deserve this?
Thank you, Jade. Justice for victims is at the heart of this policy. This should not be a party political issue. There is clearly a problem that needs solving, and what I want to do is help solve it. But if we just misdirect or delay or review, it's basically not taking a decision. That's what we want to fix. And then the final person is Vicky. Vicky, are you ready to come in? Yeah. Please.
First of all, I would echo what you just said about it being not a party political issue. And I'm sure every other survivor on this panel will agree that we are all kind of tired of hearing the back and forth between political parties, and we just want a resolution now. For me, I went to the police 36 years after my abuse happened. I got caught in the court delays, had to do a victims' right to review to get my convictions. So to receive the letter that I received on the 24th of June, I didn't even believe it to start with. I didn't believe that it was meant for me. I thought it was a circular that all victims were getting because it was so impersonal. And then to find out after seeing Carol on Channel 4, that's when I realised that it wasn't just a circular. The struggle to get people prosecuted for sexual offences is huge, and I don't think anybody can fully appreciate just how much effort and time and energy goes into doing that. So to find that your abuser could potentially...
It's okay. I understand. You don't need to say any more. I think we all know where you...
potentially be released at 33% is just so upsetting.
It's an extremely distressing it's an extremely distressing thing to think about, let alone talk about or have to experience. And that's why I want these women to know that they are not alone. This is something that is common sense. The people of the country are behind you. The British public are behind you. No one believes that this category of prisoners should be released. We know that there is a challenge with the prison system. This is not the answer. This is not the way to do it. I don't want to push you any further if you don't, but I think we all understand just how distressing and how significant this is for all of the individuals who are concerned. So I will stop this part of the press conference and I will hand over to Kieran Mullan, who is the Shadow Prisons Minister and Shadow Minister for Victims.
Thank you. Thanks, Kemi. And I first want to just give my own personal thanks to all of you for what you've done today. When we had the legislation passing in Parliament, I said to Labour MPs and all MPs, imagine how you'll feel 6 months from now if someone comes to your surgery and says that they're a victim of rape and why did you vote to let these people out earlier? But that was an abstract idea, trying to get them to imagine people. We now know what this is in reality, thanks to all of you. And not just the people here today who've been so brave in speaking out, but other victims who aren't with us, people like Fiona Goddard who's spoken out about this, people like the widow and mother of PC Andrew Harper. It's only through their courage. Yeah. And as we've discussed, we know almost 9,000 victims of serious offences have had these letters. So when you're here today, you're speaking up on behalf of all of them. And so thank you so much for doing that. But I want to do is lay out how we've got here, because actually, fundamentally, this policy has been dishonest from the start in terms of what it actually means. And I know this is something that the victims have told me themselves in three fundamental ways. So initially we were told that this was what's described as the earned progression model. So the argument was that people would have to earn these releases, for example, by things like attending rehabilitation courses, training, anger management, things like that. Actually, that's completely untrue. It's described as an earned progression model even now, but it's not earned. These releases are automatic. These people get out at these release points.
I'm sorry, but
regardless.
When they're in prison, they're automatically on good behaviour. There's no children in prison.
Yes. Yeah.
There's no children for them to abuse in prison. So automatically, they already are on good behaviour. And they get time taken off for good behaviour.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for
interrupting. No, at this point. Down again.
They don't announce their risk in prison. How can you possibly know when it's untested, when they're not near children, whether or not they're safe? Yes,
absolutely. And so, as I said, in that fundamental way, the policy has been dishonest. The second way in which it's been dishonest is that we were all told, the public, victims, that the most serious offenders would be excluded. That is the wording that the ministers used, and the ladies here have told me about the fact that they heard that and they believed that, and that's why they thought they would never be included in these schemes. But we now know, incredibly powerfully illustrated today, that is simply not true. And the third way in which the policy is fundamentally dishonest is that they have talked about it in relation to the short-term challenge that Kemi has talked about in relation to prison capacity, and there absolutely is a short-term challenge, but this is not a short-term fix or a short-term plan to deal with it. This is a permanent change to our justice system, which means not just the ladies that are here with us today who've got offenders in prison right now, but any future victim will also see the justice that they seek to secure from the prison system fundamentally eroded. And I think we need to raise the alarm about that and make it crystal clear that what is happening right now under the cover of a short-term challenge, which is of course real, is a permanent and long-term change to our justice system. So those are three ways in which the policy has fundamentally been dishonest. And I think now that people understand the policy, now they understand the truth, that's why we've seen the backlash and the outcry, which is completely correct. And I just want to set out, as Kemi's touched on, in terms of the legislation, where we are right now, because a pause essentially means nothing. Until the legislation is changed, these people are getting out in September, and there are two things that the government must do in order to stop that. The first thing they have to do is revoke the commencement order, which means immediately the programme is stopped. That's the true pause of the programme, but a commencement order cannot be used on a permanent basis. It must only be a temporary measure, and so they will require primary legislation to go through Parliament to ensure that this programme is changed. We're ready to help them do that. We know that legislation can be passed very quickly if there's cooperation from all parties, and we're offering that cooperation. Those are the key points I want everyone to take away from today about how we're ready to help, about the nature of the programme in reality compared to what we were told it was going to be. And I think if you think about those two things in hand, you'll realise that the government has to go further than simply saying it's looking at it. And the final point I want to make is this is actually just building on the uncertainty that these women have already and other victims have already experienced. We're asking them to wait yet more weeks, finding out who will or won't be excluded. What they need is certainty right now that these sorts of offenders will not be released earlier.
We can't carry on like this. We can't face this trauma day in, day out. Yeah. It's so tiring, and we're tired of fighting. We need this resolved, and we need it sorted now.
We are exhausted.
Yeah.
Absolutely exhausted. To our stomachs. I just feel that something needs to be done.
But can I just say, for all of us to have and come sit on this panel publicly and plead with the government to change this, there's something fundamentally wrong with the situation that it's been allowed to get to this point.
You're absolutely right.
We live with this. You know, we basically have this for our lives. Yeah. You know, PTSD for life. You know, if anybody knows what that actually means, you know, it's destroying us.
It's not just us either, it's our families.
Exactly.
It's our loved ones that have to witness what we go through.
Yeah.
And again, it's just...
And there's 9,000 of us. It's not just us. There's 9,000 other people in the country who've received these
survivors. Yeah.
How is anyone supposed to have any faith that they will get justice when this is what they do to us?
And if I could just add, Sarah's mentioned before, this is just as we're about to launch inquiries into grooming gang offences in various parts of the country, where I know Sarah and other survivors who've spoken out have women approaching them saying, should I give evidence to the inquiry? Should I talk about what happened to me? And they are now fearful about doing that because they don't know if these people, these perpetrators, are going to be released onto the streets at the very moment we're asking them to be even more brave.
I think that the point about future victims is also very salient, because there will be other perpetrators who think, well, it's probably worth committing a crime. I'll probably not get caught, and even if I do, I'll just serve a third of my sentence. This is the wrong message to be sending out to criminals, to violent people. It's absolutely the wrong message. And I'm just, thankful, Marie, because you've made a point which I hadn't made.
Thank you.
Which is that this is a life sentence for you.
Absolutely.
They only get sentences of 20, 30 years. Even most life sentences are not whole life sentences. It's the victims who have the life sentences. And that is why it is really important for all of us, whatever political party we're in, wherever we are on the political spectrum, to put the victims first. It is really critical. So I want to conclude just by saying that there is a way to fix this challenge. The first thing we've got to do is to revoke this commencement order. Whatever Andy Burnham says, if he does not revoke the commencement order, there is no pause. That's the thing that starts it. If it's not revoked, there is no pause. Talking about a pause or a review, it's not real. What is real is revoking that commencement order. He can do that now. That doesn't require Parliament to be sitting. The next thing that he needs to do is emergency legislation by the 2nd of September. This is something that we're happy to help with. They can draft this legislation over the summer. We know that they could do it for a potential World Cup win. This can be done. And we've done it before with steel nationalisation. Parliament gets through it in a day. It needs cooperation of other parties. As the opposition, we will offer our support in order to get this passed. But there needs to be a longer-term solution. We do need to build new prison places more quickly and cheaply. This will cost money, but it also needs communities to be supportive of prisons being built around them. One of the things that did cause delays was judicial reviews of prisons not being built. If everybody says no prison near me, we won't get these built. So this is something that the public can help with. Let us build prisons to put these people in. We cannot say no to every single potential site for a prison. We have plans that we're working on how we can build more prisons quickly and cheaply. The second thing that we can do a little bit earlier is rent prison places overseas. This was something which we were doing in government. We had plans to rent prison places, just like Sweden has done with Estonia, so that we didn't have to just release these sorts of violent criminals early. We could have put them in other countries. The third thing is to remove foreign offenders to prisons in their home countries. This is very difficult. This is one of the reasons why we said we have to leave the Convention on Human Rights. That's the thing that is blocking us from doing that. This is not a light thing to do. We have set out plans on what we would do and how we would do them. We need people to serve some of their sentences in other countries. This isn't appropriate for everybody, but where appropriate, this is another thing that will help release the pressure on prison places. That is how we deal with this issue in its entirety. But just to conclude, it is absolutely essential that the sentence is commensurate with the crime. We can't have people serving short sentences for horrific crimes. This is a red line. Public safety must come first. If there are challenges, they should be government challenges, not victim challenges. Let us be the ones to bear the burden, not these women. This is what I'm asking for. We will support the government on this if they do the right thing. But simply talking about a fake pause and hoping that this goes away, it's not real and it is not fair on the victims. That is what this press conference is about. I'm very grateful to all of you for speaking out, because this is an incredibly difficult thing to do. And I'm grateful to everyone who has turned up to listen, and to those who are watching. We can get this done. It requires seriousness and focus, and we are ready to play our part. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think I have some questions from the media. Ladies, are you happy to answer questions if you get any?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
All right. We'll start with Tom Harwood from GB News.
Thank you. Kemi, you mentioned 3 different ways in which you want to tackle this issue, all of which seem to be fairly long-term, whether that's leaving the ECHR or indeed building new prisons. Earlier in this press conference, you mentioned you would be happier to see dangerous drivers and shoplifters released early than you would sexual criminals and violent sexual offenders. Does that mean that you would accept a compromise with this government, that shoplifters and dangerous drivers would still be getting out after just a third of their sentence? And in addition, if I may, yesterday the Reform Party reported the leader of the Green Party, Zach Polanski, to the police over sharing a picture of someone wearing a T-shirt with a picture of a guillotine and a reference to Nigel Farage on it. Do you agree that that picture on Instagram should be a police matter? And do you have any comment about that incident?
All right. So I think we only need to listen to what Vicky and Carol said on your first question. Of course, we would rather no one had early release. I'm not pretending that there is no challenge. There is a challenge. If you do have to release people early, release shoplifters, not paedophiles, rapists, or killers. This is just common sense. I'm offering a common sense solution. And I'm not here to say that everything that happened under Conservatives was perfect. We also had early release schemes, but we never, ever released this category of criminals. We never, ever released rapists, paedophiles, and killers early. That is what is, quite frankly, obscene about this early release scheme. And I feel so strongly about it, but it is not, this morning is not my place. It is really for these ladies to have their say. I think it is obscene. This is not the category of offender that should be released. So if that is the compromise, as you described, Tom, for much more minor crimes, then yes, of course. You asked a second question about Zach Polanski and Nigel Farage and something on Instagram. I will confess I haven't seen it, but there should be no incitement to violence of any sort. I don't know what level it was at for a police matter, but just listening to what they are talking about and what we're talking about, Like Zach Polanski and Nigel Farage are spending too much time on Twitter and Instagram and not spending enough time talking to real people with real problems and dealing with a fundamental issue that we could see the release of 6,500 dangerous criminals on our streets by the end of the summer. That is obscene. It is not something that we should take lightly. That is what I wish they were talking about instead of whatever petty squabble this is. But thank you, Tom. Carl Dinnan from ITV, please.
How many places do you seriously think you could rent in foreign prisons? Because this is a problem that's happening now. I mean, the prisons here are full. You would need thousands of places within months were you to come to power.
So, Kieran, I think this is
Yes,
one that
yeah, sure.
you have more of the details, so I'll let you start.
I think that's why Kemi's pointed quite reasonably to a variety of options, because obviously those things would be subject to negotiation. But if we're talking about, for example, hundreds of additional spaces, there are hundreds of rapists, for example, that are going to be released after this. So it's where you find the room. And that's why we haven't said that we would oppose any programme to help manage prison capacity crises. It would be a mixture of solutions that over time would balance out. So in the short term, you're right to say that that isn't going to be a huge part of the solution in the very short term, but in the longer term, it potentially could be. I think it's whatever mixture works. One of the challenges we've had in scrutinising this issue is, of course, the government, even now, the government won't tell us how many of each of these offenders are due to be released. So you ask that question, the government won't tell us what we would have to secure in order to achieve that. All of the figures that you see reported in the press are figures that either we've had to calculate or the press themselves. For example, the Telegraph did some excellent work calculating some of the figures. So that makes it extremely difficult. And I think that's another thing that government, it's just totally unacceptable to be leaving the public and opposition politicians and even their own MPs in the dark about who they're actually planning to release. We don't know right now for sure how many spaces we would need because the government won't tell us.
Thank you. What I would add to that is just that we know that this is a difficult issue. But this early release of killers, rapists, paedophiles is the worst of all options. It's the worst of all options. We can rent prison places in other countries. We can probably manage overcrowding, which is what happens when you don't release people early, better. What are we doing to support prison officers? Are we paying them more? That's probably a cheaper way, giving them more support in order to manage those difficult situations. I haven't heard the government talk about any of those things. There are ways to deal with this, but it does need heads being banged together, and let's come up with much better solutions than just releasing the people who hurt these women and just saying, well, sorry, there's nothing we can do. That's not good enough at all.
And can I just add to
They're putting their problem onto us.
Yeah, exactly.
When we've got problems enough because of what happened to us.
Exactly. This should be the government's problem, not the victim's problem.
We're trying to, we're trying to make, little children safe, because what we've been through, we wouldn't want any of, other little children out there to go through what we've actually been through and suffer.
The problem is we'll never stop child sexual exploitation, no matter what you do, how much you try. What we can do is we can all work together to try and stamp it out as much as we can. But what message is our government sending out to survivors and victims, future survivors and victims, if they're already going to be letting dangerous offenders out early? It's not sending out the right message. If I'd have known that this was going to be the circumstances, there's no way I'd have put myself through all that trauma for my perpetrators to get a slap on the wrist. It wouldn't have been worth it.
Can I also say from the offender's point of view as well, if there is no significant deterrent, that could increase the risk of offending. So allowing somebody out of prison at 33% for sexual offences, it gives the message to offenders or potential offenders that they really aren't going to be in prison for very long for doing it.
Exactly.
There's no deterrent.
Exactly.
There's 500,000 children estimated going to be raped every year as it is, and there's no deterrent if they're going to get a slap on the wrist.
All right, thank you. Lucy McDade from Sky News.
Yeah, hello. I'll stand up because I'm short. Thank you as well for sharing, because I feel incredibly nervous just asking a question, let alone having to listen to what you had to share publicly today. Kemi Badenoch, is this crisis in prisons one of, if not the worst failing of the Conservative government of 14 years? Because you spoke there about building thousands of new prison places. Actually, it was a net increase of 500, and that was before the coronavirus pandemic. These warnings were there. Secondly, following on from what Tom asked you about Zach Polanski, he's got more than 700,000 followers on Instagram. His excuse was that he just didn't look at the photos before he was sharing them. Is that good enough for the leader of a political party?
So on the crisis in prison places, this has been a long time. This has been a long time coming. We did some things, as I said, it wasn't enough, and I'm sorry about that. But I can't fix the past. What I can do is come up with solutions for now and for tomorrow. Asking me to look at what happened, 10 years before I became an MP and so on, it's not really what my job is. It's not really what my job is now. What I do know is that even under our early release schemes, I think 10,000 prisoners over 14 years is what we released. Labour has released how many in 2 years?
Well, I think it's 60,000 in this round.
So 60,000 under 2 years of Labour versus 10,000 under 14 years of Conservatives. This is a scandal. And before then, I think it was about
80,000 under the last time they were in
Yes.
government. And the other thing I just add on the prison capacity issue, as Kemi said, we should have done more. But in the 2 years they've been in, the net number has gone down by 500. But I think what the ladies will say to us is, as you can see, we can all exchange figures and records on this. And that's because for many decades we haven't delivered in the way that we should for victims. And we can focus on that if we want to, or we can focus on the fact that we all agree that this isn't acceptable and that we want to do something differently and work together to solve it.
Can I just say something on the figures? The Telegraph figures, when you're looking at the sexual offenders that we're talking about, it's less than 2,000 by the Telegraph's figures. So realistically, you have to look at logically about how much of a dent that will make in the prison population in any case, given the seriousness of their offences.
Yeah. And can I pick up on that? And that's why, and the reason for that is actually because this is a long-term change that they're seeking to make. As you've said, if it was a short-term challenge, there are different ways that you can do it. It's actually because it's driven by a desire to do this on a permanent basis.
Yes, exactly.
And that's what we're calling out.
Yes, the permanence of this policy is what makes it even worse. On your second question, I don't think either of those two party leaders takes their job seriously. We need to make sure that there is always an alternative to any government, whatever flavour of government it is. And what I actually find is that I'm the only one who's spending time talking about real issues while other people are retweeting and tweeting memes and so on. There's a place for that. I worry sometimes, even looking at Andy Burnham, that there's a lot more going on social media than there is in terms of serious policy. And an announcement is not serious policy. A plan is serious policy. I am coming up with actual plans, not just announcements, and not spending all my time online. We all enjoy our Instagram and all of the funny things that are on there. But I think if Zach Polanski and Nigel Farage spent less time on trivial things and more time on serious things, then the whole of the political system would be in a better place.
Just to interrupt, this is a press conference about the early release of prisoners. It's not about what's been happening on Twitter. And I think it's offensive to the ladies that have given their time up that the press are asking questions about
Absolutely.
that. And I think Kemi's handled it really well, and she can't say what I can say as a guest here, but I'm offended for them. So if questions are directed in relation to Twitter spats, can they be directed outside of this room, please?
People say to me many times on my Facebook that they should have hung him. So that, but I don't condone hanging. So I don't want my dad's blood on my hand. I want him to serve his time that is being set. So if somebody, but yeah, I will still respect them. That is their view. But that doesn't mean they're going to go around and kill somebody because they believe that in corporal punishment. So it's not right that they should be bringing that into this conference.
Thank you. I hope that is noted. Next question from Ria Chatterjee from Channel 4.
Hello, I just wanted to start by saying thank you to all the women who have shared their experiences with us this morning. I know it's not an easy thing to do. So, a question for Kemi Badenoch. Can you reassure the women sat next to you and all survivors and victims that you're not raising their hopes and expectations for political gain by setting out for us how you'll support them if the early release scheme goes ahead?
Well, this is a very interesting question. We are not the government. It's the government that has the power. If I was in government, then absolutely I could make that commitment. But we have a Labour government with a huge majority, and this is what they're doing with their majority. They are releasing a category of prisoners, killers, rapists, and paedophiles, who have never, ever been released before. We had early release schemes. No one here is saying that we didn't, but it was not for this category of prisoners. That is the best thing we can deal with now if we want to support these women. We can stop the rapists, paedophiles who hurt them and so many other people from being let out from September. There's nothing else will provide more support to the people here than stopping that, and that is why we are here today.
This is beyond politics. Like, it's so far past politics. It's literally a matter of right and wrong and saving our country. Letting these people out is the worst thing that could possibly happen for our communities, because they will reoffend. We know the reoffending rates. So it's so far beyond politics now. He needs to make the right decision.
Yeah. And can I also say that I think people might underestimate our determination in forcing this. We do plan to keep fighting until they change this law. My particular offender is due to be released within the first, set of people being released. So I won't stop fighting, even if he does get out. So, although we're getting reassurances, we're not going to stop.
We're using the platforms that are hearing us and listening to us, and that's what we have to do, and that's what we are here to do. It's not politics.
Thank you. And can I just add to that? I've always been clear to all of the victims that I've met that we can't make any promises on this, but I'm not going to take away from their agency to choose to campaign on it and put their emotional stress that they've gone through, if that's what they believe they want to do to try and stop this, and I'm going to do everything I can to support it. But having said that, we've been in touch with at least 2 charities that support victims in these circumstances, and I've made that offer available to the women I've met previously, and I'll do the same to additional victims we meet today. As Kemi said, we don't have the resources to support all the thousands of people that are affected. Only the government can do that, but we're at least trying to support the victims and the women here today who we know are making an enormous sacrifice in speaking out in the way they have.
And I'm still in therapy 35 years after it's happened, and I'm waiting to have EMDR treatment now, because I say my nervous system is steady enough to go through with it, and this has just like brought me back to where I was before. So it's not my treatment back. They're not going to be having treatment. They're not going to be having therapy for the rest of their lives.
This is the life sentence that it's really critical people understand. So I have a final question from Charles Hymas from The Telegraph, please, before we close.
Hello, Charles Hymas from The Telegraph. If the government comes forward with the proposal for 650 rapists, child rapists and killers, and would exempt them from the scheme, would you support that? As I know you said it was a minimum, but would you support that?
650? I thought it was.
I think, as we've said, Charles, we'll have to understand what the figures are, because we don't know for sure. And then I think our precedent is our starting point is the earlier schemes and the exclusions that they typically included. But we'll look at the detail of any specific proposal. But as I've said, the point we want to make clear to everybody is this is a permanent change. And so whilst we might kind of agree that if it were an emergency scheme, we could perhaps agree with it, we can't let go of the fact that it's a permanent change, that they could then come back and change at some later date. So we have to be very cautious in what we agree to, and even if we agree things in the short term, that doesn't mean we won't revisit it further on to unpick the permanent changes they're making for everybody, all offenders, essentially. That includes people not going to prison at all, people getting a third for a whole range of offences on a permanent basis. That isn't the direction of travel I think the public support for all offenders.
Can you give us some idea of just the categories?
There's a broader point in what you said on whether we would accept that. We have already tabled amendments to stop the release, for instance, of I think it was just rapists for one of them.
We tried, because we've been reasonable. So we began with kind of any serious violent offender, any sexual offender, any terrorist offenders. We then compromised further during its passage in Parliament, because we were desperate to stop it to some extent, to focus on sexual offenders. Our Opposition Day debate was narrowed as well. But we will have to look at it in detail. And I don't think we can commit.
The point I'm making is that we have already done quite a lot to show how we would work with the government and how to support. They voted against them. Liberal Democrats in the Commons say they support, then the ones in the Lords join the government to vote it down. We need other parties to show their hands. What exactly are they willing to do and say? If we're going to solve this cross-party, then there needs to be some honesty. We had a motion in Parliament on this very issue, and Labour MPs did not even vote at all, which means that they are clearly uncomfortable with this. They're clearly uncomfortable with this, and they didn't want to vote against us. So if they are uncomfortable, whether that's Andy Burnham or any of his 400 MPs, then they should do the right thing, put their money where their mouths are, and help us solve this problem. Whether the specific numbers or how we do it and so on remains to be seen. We've shown our cards. What are they going to do? And that's what I'm asking them now. Simply talking about reviews, talking about pauses, it's not real. I want them to do something that is actually real, not social media clips and hope that the problem is going to go away, because it's not going to go away for these women, and we're going to keep fighting for them.
Just one final point on that. If the government's argument is that they're going to run out of spaces in November unless they introduce the scheme in its entirety, how do you respond to that point that they make about the impact that it will have on the prison system?
So the category of prisoner is something that they need to look at. This is not about early release as a scheme. This is about this specific category, which we have never, ever released before. And until they come clean with the numbers, until they're very clear about the nature of the programme, we don't believe them, because we know what it was like when we were in office. We saw the difficulties, and we never, ever considered this. We never, ever considered this. So why are they doing that? I want to thank everyone for coming up to this morning. I know I need to bring proceedings to a close. I'm really glad that all of the ladies on the panel have been able to share their stories. This is an issue that is really urgent. It is imminent. We can stop it, and we hope that we will have support from other political parties and the public in general in order to stop the early release of dangerous criminals, including killers, paedophiles and rapists. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.